The air was heavy with dread, soaked in cold rain and the stink of hopelessness. Lot 24 wasn't just unwanted, it was despised. Nira, the cursed Omega of the ruined Shadowfang pack, stood alone. Her hair was tangled, her spirit shattered, and the silver cuffs on her wrists bit into her skin with a numbing chill. The auctioneer's voice scraped the silence like a rusty blade. "Do I hear one copper mark for this husk of a wolf?" Shame clung to her like wet wool. Then a voice icy as northern frost, commanding as thunder, sliced through the gloom. 1,000,000 gold marks! Every head jerked upward. From the shadows of the high balcony, Kael, Alpha King of Ethgard citadel, had spoken. Griffin's Pass, a cold mountain amphitheater where hope was buried, went silent. Carved into the merciless stone of the mountain, open to the gray weeping sky, the pass was packed with wolves, from velvet-clad alphas to gaunt rogues. In cracked leathers, all eyes were there. Not for mercy, but for ownership. This was the Blood Moon Conclave, a name dressed in silk for what was truly a slave auction. Nira stood in the filth below the block, trembling. She was 18. For 6 months since the massacre of her pack, she'd been nothing but property traded by rogue slavers, and now sold in this cold-blooded pageant. Lot 24, the final lot, the forgotten. Next up boomed Silas the auctioneer, a bloated beta sweating through his shirt. Lot 24. Omega female, 18 years. 2 guards shoved her up the slick steps. The silver cuffs on her wrists and ankles were etched with runes that stifled her connection to her wolf. They burned like frost. Her wolf loon whimpered at the edge of her mind, a shadow of what she once was. Nira kept her eyes low. Mud-splashed boots filled her vision. The stench of ale, of anticipation, of mockery hung thick. A bit thin, Silas chuckled, a salesman peddling wreckage. But purebred Shadowfang pack, pre-incident. A hush fell. The incident. That was what they called the slaughter that orphaned her, turned her into poison. Rumors claimed she was the cause, that her cursed presence had summoned the rogues who ripped her world apart. The lone survivor. And that was suspicious. "She's the cursed Omega," a voice scoffed from the crowd. Laughter followed. Now, Darius, Silas said, trying to placate. "One wolf's curse is another's plaything. She's guaranteed barren. No pups to worry over. Just service." He grinned. The crowd snickered. Alpha Darius bloated, and Cruel leaned forward with piggish eyes. "A barren Omega. What use is that? You can't even breed her, and that one, she reeks of death. I wouldn't take her if she begged me." Laughter swelled. Nira closed her eyes, hands clenched so tightly. Her nails drew blood. Her humiliation was a second skin. "Gentlemen!" Silas pressed, voice cracking. "Perfect for housework. Let's start at 50 silver. Nothing. Only rain and shame filled the silence. 50 silver, he tried again. Nothing. 1 copper. Anyone, still nothing. This was it. Rejection so complete it could only end one way. Disposal. They didn't say the word, but everyone knew what happened when a wolf wasn't bought. A blade in the dark. Quiet. Efficient. Very well. Silas sighed, his smile curdling. He lifted his gavel. 1,000,000 gold marks. The voice didn't shout. It didn't need to. It cut. Every head turned. In the royal balcony, a figure stepped from the gloom, towering, broad-shouldered, cloaked in black leather. Power coiled around him like smoke. Kael, the Ice King, Alpha of the Bloodcrest pack. Ruler of Ethgard and the entire northern range, a myth in flesh. He hadn't shown his face at a conclave in over a decade. Now he'd offered a fortune for a girl no one wanted. Darius choked on his laughter. Silas trembled. Your Majesty, did you say 1,000,000? Kael rested his hand on the stone railing. He wore no crown, no sigils, but he didn't need them. He was the crown. His pale blue eyes, sharp as frozen steel, were locked not on the auctioneer, but on Nira. They weren't lustful like Darius's, nor were they kind. They were cold, calculating, as if weighing her soul like a blade. "Did I stutter, auctioneer?" The voice echoed through he barely raised it. No, your majesty," Silas stammered. 1,000,000 gold marks. Going once, going twice sold. The gavel cracked like thunder. To King Cale of the Bloodcrest pack, Cale didn't smile, didn't move. He only watched her. Possession sealed with a glance. A man in the king's black and crimson livery appeared beside Nira. A stern beta, with a scar slashed down his cheek. "This way," he said flatly, unlocking her cuffs. The rune-burned silver clattered to the ground. The world slammed into her pine-wet stone, the sharp metallic scent of Kael's power. And the faint whimper of Loon. Safe number. Different. She stumbled as the beta Riven, though she wouldn't learn his name yet, pulled her along, down a tunnel, into the shadows, toward her new life. No one had wanted the cursed Omega, until the Alpha King did, and as she was placed inside a black carriage marked with the roaring crimson wolf sigil of Kael's pack, Nira knew one thing with terrifying clarity. This wasn't freedom. It was just a new kind of cage. The ride to Ethgard's citadel lasted 3 days. Not a word was spoken. She was shut inside the carriage with 4 guards giants, with hard eyes and crimson crests. They never looked at her. That silence worse than the laughter at the block. She was less than a person, just cargo. Kael rode ahead on a towering warhorse black as night. Nira only caught glimpses of him when the path curved, his cloak whipping in the wind snow, seeming to avoid him. Not a savior, a storm. They gave her bread, cheese, and a flask of water. She was permitted to relieve herself under the cold gaze of a moon watcher who stared at the wall rather than at her. But no blanket, no warmth. The cold wasn't just physical, it crept into her bones like it belonged there now. This wasn't weather. It was a sentence. Her thoughts wouldn't stop spinning. Why her? Why 1,000,000 gold marks? That kind of coin could buy a fleet of warriors or a borderland stronghold. To spend it on a barren, cursed Omega. It defied logic. Was he insane, entertaining himself, or twisted beyond reason? Loon, her wolf, remained silent. The suppression cuffs were gone, but their lingering curse still numbed her soul. She was too drained, too scared, and too hungry to hear Loon clearly. On the morning of the 4th day they arrived. Ethgard wasn't a palace, it was a mountain carved into a fortress. It rose like a black monolith from the snowy peaks, its spires of dark granite stabbing into the clouds. Beautiful, imposing. A stronghold built not for comfort, but for command. The massive iron gates creaked open. The carriage clattered across the torch-lit courtyard, and the air sliced into her lungs with alpine sharpness. "Out!" Riven's voice rang out as he yanked open the door. Nira scrambled down her bare feet, striking the ice-cold stones. She winced, but stood tall. She would not flinch. Not again. Cale was already there, speaking quietly to another wolf before dismissing him. The moment he turned, silence fell over the entire courtyard. He walked toward her, snow crunching beneath his boots. Up close he was even more unreal. At least 6'5", built like a statue carved from war itself. Jet black hair pulled back tight. A face all stone lines and ruthless beauty, saved from pure severity by the aristocratic cut of his jaw. Then his eyes. Icy blue. Too sharp to be kind. Too focused to be cruel. They weren't eyes. They were judgment. He stopped a foot away. "So this is it," Kael said, voice low and rumbling like earth moving beneath frost. "The great curse of the Shadowfang pack. Nira flinched at the name. I'm Nira, I know what you are. He cut her off with razor precision. He circled her once slow and measured like a hunter considering whether the snare was worth resetting. You're my purchase, my property. He came back to face her. Do you understand what that means? Nira's throat was dry as ash. I serve at your pleasure. A flicker crossed his face. Not amusement. Something heavier, darker. No, you don't. His voice sharpened like ice cracking underfoot. You won't serve me at all. He said pleasure like it was poison in his mouth. Then he motioned to a grim-faced woman in a gray wool dress who had appeared without a sound. Cora, this is the acquisition. Take her to the West Wing. Clean her. Feed her. Prepare her. Nira's voice came out as a whisper. Prepare me. For what Kael looked at her for the first time really looked, and in that instant behind all the ice and steel she saw it. A deep, hopeless ache. The look of a man carrying something he knew would crush him. For your purpose, he said flatly. Then he turned cloak whipping like a shadow across the stones and disappeared into the fortress. Cora, the housekeeper, looked like she'd been born sour. Her voice was clipped steel. Come on, girl. You've already been enough trouble. She seized Nira's arm in an iron grip and hauled her inside. The citadel was a labyrinth of cold grandeur, stone walls hung with rich tapestries, stairwells lost in shadow. No laughter, no fire-baked scent of bread, just silence and watchful eyes. The few pack members she glimpsed hurried past her like she didn't exist. She was taken to a chamber in the West Wing, bigger than her entire home back in the valley. There was a hearth, a thick fur rug, a massive bed carved from dark wood, but the windows were barred. The door had a heavy lock on the outside. A gilded cage. 2 young Omega maids entered pale and silent. They didn't speak. Their hands worked quickly, stripping her rags. They scrubbed her with water that scalded and rubbed her down like she was a wild thing to be disinfected. When they dragged a comb through her matted hair, Nira bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. They dressed her in a plain wool dress. Clean. Warm. But it was still a uniform. A prisoner's. Someone brought food stew, thick and hot and soft bread. She devoured it like a starving dog, not caring who watched. It was the first real meal she'd had in half a year. When the tray was gone, the fire was stoked. Then the door locked. And she was alone. She curled into the fur blankets on the massive bed. She was clean. She was warm. Her belly was full. And she had never felt more afraid. Kyle hadn't bought her for service, not for pleasure. He had bought her for something else. And staring at the cold bars and dark stone walls, Nira knew with chilling certainty. Whatever that purpose was, it wasn't something she was meant to survive. Days bled into weeks. Her cage was lavish, yes, but a cage still. She was fed 3 times a day. The Omega maids whose names she learned were Nomi and Sira came and went like ghosts. They cleaned. They replaced clothes. They never spoke more than yes, miss, or no, miss. They weren't afraid of her. They were afraid of what might happen if they were caught talking to her. She saw no one else. Not Kael. Not Riven. Not even Cora. She was a wraith in a fortress made of silence. Isolation hollowed her out, so she turned inward. Slowly, Lune stirred. The numbness faded. Without the cuffs, her senses sharpened. And then, something strange happened. One morning, a small sparrow tumbled into the room, through the chimney flue. It flailed a wing, bent wrong, slamming against the bars in a panic. Nira rushed to it. Shh. Little one, she whispered, scooping it gently in her hands. She'd always been good with animals. It was part of being Omega. But this was different. As she stroked its trembling body, something warmed in her palms. Not heat, but life, energy. She felt the erratic heartbeat steady, felt the shift of fragile bones, the mend of something broken. And then the sparrow chirped. Calm. It nipped at her finger like a thank you. When she opened her hands, it spread its wings strong now. With a flutter, it flew back up the flue. Nira stared at her hands. What did I just do? A few days later, someone new arrived. Not a maid. A woman. Silver-streaked hair in a strict bun. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. The mark of a healer on her cloak. Nira, she said, briskly, not waiting for a reply. I'm Solara. The king ordered a full examination. Nira froze. Examination. Yes. To determine your viability. That word. Viability. It hit colder than the mountain wind. Viability for what Solara didn't answer. And Nira suddenly understood whatever Kale had planned. It had already begun. Solara didn't answer the question. She set down her worn leather bag and gestured firmly. Sit. This requires blood samples. The exam was clinical and personal, like dissecting something curious rather than tending to someone living. Solara wasn't cruel, just distant. Her hands practiced her questions unsettling. She drew blood, checked Nira's lungs, her heartbeat, her eyes. And then came the questions. Did your mother ever heal things she shouldn't have? As a child, did you ever feel something before it happened? Have you ever sensed a pull toward the moon? But not like the usual Omega cycle. Nira froze. The sparrow flashed in her mind. No, she said, keeping her tone even. I'm just Omega. Nothing more. Solara made a sharp sound in her throat. Not disbelief. Analysis. The auction tests were incomplete. They marked you barren. She studied the blood as if it whispered. But my results, they don't add up. She packed away her instruments, her expression unreadable. Your Omega markers are there, but scrambled like they're hiding something deeper, something far more potent. She snapped her case closed. I'll need to run more diagnostics. The king will want to see this. That night, Nira jolted awake to the clash of voices in the hallway. Boots, shouting, armor, tension thick in the air. She leapt out of bed and pressed her ear to the wooden door. You had no right, a voice bellowed, slurred with ale and fury. She knew that voice. Darius. The king stole her. That Omega should have been mine. I would have had her for 50 silver. Then Kale's voice, cool and quiet, but sharp enough to cut through bone. You walk into my hall, Darius. Drunk. Loud. Uninvited. This is your first and only warning. Leave. I will not. You made a mockery of the conclave. Paid $1 million for a broken, cursed mutt. What Ice King? Too lonely to earn your own bed warmer, and a barren one at that. Then it happened. A sound tore through the stone like thunder. Something violent. Something final. A roar. A crack. A thud. Then, choking. Nira peeked through the keyhole, barely breathing. Kael had Darius by the throat, lifted off the ground with one hand. Darius's face had turned a sickly shade, his legs dangling. Kael's eyes, those usual cold ice blues, were now bottomless black. Rage pulsed off him in waves. His fangs gleamed beneath his snarl. You will not speak of her again. His voice rumbled like an earthquake beneath stone. Around them, Darius's guards had fallen to their knees, heads bowed, unable to withstand the crushing weight of Kael's alpha aura. She is mine. The words vibrated through the wall, the floor, through her, like a brand seared into her bones. She is my property. What I do with my property is my concern. His tone was pure dominance, cold and primal. You're a fading alpha from a forgotten pack, and you think you can question me? Please. Darius choked, his lips blue. Kael held him a moment longer, then with brutal grace hurled him across the hall. Darius crashed into the wall and crumpled in a heap before his own warriors. Riven. Kael's voice was calm again, chillingly so. "Yes, my king," the beta answered immediately, stepping forward. "Escort him to the border. If he sets foot in my land again, hang his head from the gate. Do I make myself clear abundantly, my king?" Kael stepped forward, brushed imaginary dust from his sleeve, and Darius, his voice dipped into something more lethal. "Next time you question the value of what I claim, remember what 1,000,000 marks can buy." He paused. "Then remember what my hand can do for free." The hallway fell silent as death. Footsteps retreated. Nira backed away from the door, heart pounding. She sat heavily on the edge of the bed. He had destroyed Darius. For her. No, not for her. He had defended his property. Still, as she curled beneath the blankets, something dangerous stirred deep inside. He'd said mine. Not casually. Not coldly. Like a vow. She touched her throat where she imagined his grip, and for the first time Loon stirred in her soul with something other than fear. Curiosity. Dark. Sharp. Unspoken. Who was he? And what was she really? Solara's tests weren't just routine. Her blood held secrets. And now Nira understood. She wasn't just trapped in a gilded cage. She was the secret the king was trying to unlock. High above the citadel, Kael stood motionless on the stone balcony overlooking the silverroot tree. Once it had been the heart of the Bloodcrest pack. Now its branches hung like broken limbs, leaves the color of dead ash instead of crimson flame. The great tree was dying. And with it so was his kingdom. It had started 5 years ago. First the ground bitter frost that came too soon. Then the prey vanishing from the forest. Then his wolves. Pups born too small. Bonds that refused to vow him. Spirits fading like smoke. The once mighty Bloodcrest pack was slowly rotting from the roots up. It's worse this moon, isn't it? He didn't turn. He'd sensed her. Mavi. Elder. Advisor. Unshaken by titles. She moved beside him in silence, her long silvered braid swinging gently, her fingers clutched around charms older than the citadel itself. "The blight has reached the lower branches," Kael muttered. Solara reported 3 more failed pregnancies this week. Mavi's gaze stayed fixed on the dying tree. And the girl, he didn't answer right away. Answer right. "The cursed Omega you paid a fortune for," Mavi pressed. "She's strong," Kael said at last, "healthier than any of us, and you still intend to follow it." His jaw tensed. The prophecy is clear. He didn't need to pull the old tome again. Its words haunted him. When the crimson peak bleeds and the silver root withers, the land shall cry for the silent moon. The Alpha King must claim the Omega who is not Omega, the wolf who is not wolf. Her blood shall cleanse the land. Her death will birth life. The words tasted like ash. "The blood moon rises in 2 weeks, Mavi whispered. "You bought her. To spill her blood beneath the roots." Kael's voice was sharp. It was to guarantee the purchase. To silence alphas like Darius. "Was it?" she asked softly. "You didn't hesitate. You paid the price of a queen." Kael's head snapped toward her. "Do not. I helped raise you, Kael. I know the man and the king, and I know your wolf." Mavi stepped closer. "You haven't spoken to her. Haven't even looked her in the eye since she arrived. You send guards. You send doctors. You do everything but face her." "You think I'm stalling," he growled. "I think your wolf already chose her. I think you're afraid to admit it." Kael gritted his teeth, staring back at the dying tree. He wasn't preparing a sacrifice. He was standing at the edge of a truth he couldn't bear to face. And the cost was already written in blood. "I need to be sure her blood is the answer," Kael muttered, voice rough with guilt. Mavi's eyes held something colder than judgment, pity. "What if it's not her blood the prophecy speaks of?" she asked softly. "What if it's—" Her bond. Kale stiffened. She's barren. Cursed. A dead-end omega. The prophecy says spill her blood. Yes. Mavy's voice dipped. But you and I both know not all sacrifice comes from death. She smells of storm and fire, and since she arrived you haven't slept in your own chambers. You haunt the study that borders her wing. He turned away, jaw clenched. Your counsel is noted, matron. You're dismissed. Mavy laid a weathered hand on his arm, gentle but firm. Be careful, my king. Prophecies are riddles, not commands. There's more than one way to destroy a pack. One is by killing an innocent girl. The other is killing your mate, is killing your... She let the word hang like a curse and left him alone in the silence. Kyle roared and slammed his fist into the stone balustrade. It cracked down the center. Mate. The word echoed like a ghost. A lie. A nightmare. But he couldn't run from it. The moment he saw her small defiant trembling on that auction block, his wolf silent for years had roared to life with a single possessive scream. Mine. He hadn't spent 1,000,000 marks to buy a sacrifice. He had bought her so no other alpha could touch her. He had hidden her away not to prepare her for death, but to protect himself from what he couldn't deny. Every part of him wanted Poa to go to her, mark her, bond with her. But the prophecy said to spill her blood. His kingdom was crumbling, his people were starving, his land rotting beneath his feet. He was their king. He had to act. He would wait for Solara's final results. Prove that Nira was the Omega who was not Omega, and when the blood moon rose, he would do what kings were made to do. He would carve out his own heart to save them all. He stared at the dying Silverroot, a prayer on his breath. 2 weeks, he whispered to the wind. Just 2 more weeks. In the west wing, Nira woke with a cry, her head pounding her skin damp with cold sweat. She sat up fast, only she wasn't in her bed anymore. She was somewhere else. Stone pressed cold against her palms. A dying scent clung to the air like rot and regret. The chill of the balcony, the ancient tree, and inside her chest, grief. So deep it drowned her. Duty. Sacrifice. Mate. The vision vanished. She blinked and gasped, like she'd resurfaced from drowning. What's happening to me? She whispered, trembling. Loon stirred stronger now, her voice quiet but clear. He's in pain. No, Nira. Said aloud, shaking her head. Stop. Don't say it. But the truth hung between them like breath in winter. She remembered the sparrow. The healer's probing questions. The connection. She wasn't cursed. She was something different. And Kale hadn't bought her just to possess her. He'd bought her for a reason. She was the Omega who wasn't Omega. And now she saw it all. Kyle. The land. Herself. They were all tangled in a storm much darker than anyone had guessed. The atmosphere in Ethgard had turned razor tight. Kyle had doubled the Moonwatchers, and Riven moved like a shadow down the halls, always watching, always silent. In her tower, Nira was no longer just a mystery. She was a threat. Solara burst into Kyle's study without knocking something she never dared. My king, she gasped. Waving papers, the blood tests, Kyle looked up from his maps. Another village had gone silent. Speak. It's her, Nira. Solara panted. I took her blood. I dripped it onto a dying leaf from the Silverroot, and it turned red again. Crimson. Kyle stood. That's not all, Solara continued, slapping down documents. She's not just an Omega. Her blood matches ancient records I found. She's lunar. A direct descendant. Kyle's face went hard. Lunar wolves are bedtime stories. No, my king. Her blood isn't like ours. That's why she's barren. Her cycle is tied to the moon. She healed that sparrow, didn't she? And she hears your thoughts. She's empathic. A healer. That kind of power it would have drawn rogues. That's why her pack was destroyed. Solara's voice trembled. She is the Omega who is not Omega. Kael's stomach turned to stone. So the prophecy. It's true, it's not what you think. Solara said quickly. Spill her blood. No. That's not how you use a healer's gift. It's not sacrifice, it's bond. You don't shed her blood. You share it. A mating bond, she added softly. Kael went still. Mating. Mavy's warning flashed like fire through his skull. Before he could reply, the door opened. Riven stepped in, composed as ever. My king, he said smoothly. Forgive the interruption. Dr. Solara, you seem distressed. Kael gave a small nod. She brought a theory, one that may change everything. Riven glanced at the papers unreadable. My apologies, but there's urgent news. Alpha Darius has been spotted again near the southern border. Not attacking, but provoking. Kael cursed under his breath. Darius was a gnat with delusions of grandeur. Very well. Solara, not a word of this. I'll consider your theory. He left with Riven at his side. Solara remained alone, papers trembling in her hands. Riven had been too calm. And that terrified her more than anything. Nira paced in her room, skin crawling with static. Loon whined in her mind like a warning siren. Danger. Wrong. 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 The door creaked open. She turned. It wasn't a maid. It wasn't Solara. It was Kael. He filled the doorway like a thundercloud. Black leathers. Wind-wild hair. Eyes sharp and stormy. He just stood there, watching her. The look in his eyes shattered something inside her. Conflict, hunger, guilt, rage, and something worse, something raw. Who are you? He rasped. I'm Nira, she stammered. Lies! He growled, stepping forward. The door shut behind him like the click of fate. You're a healer. You're lunar. He couldn't say it. Nira, no longer the fragile creature from the block, stood tall. And you, she challenged, are you the kind of king who buys a woman just to slit her throat under a tree? Is that what I am to you? His face went pale. I read the prophecy, she said, her voice shaking with fury. Or maybe you misread it. You don't feel like a killer. You feel like a man breaking apart. You know nothing about what I feel. He hissed, stepping closer. I know everything you feel, she shouted, backing into the bedpost. I felt you that night on the balcony. I felt your pain, your torment. She stared at him, unflinching. You're not just a king. You're a coward. That broke him. He surged forward like a wave, unstoppable. But he didn't strike her. He didn't threaten. He grabbed her. Rough hands seized her arms, pulling her against him in a crash of breath and heat and fury. She gasped. He trembled. Their wolves screamed. Let me know when you're ready for the next part, and I'll keep the fire burning. You will not. Kael snarled, his face inches from hers. Did you just call me a coward? The moment they touched, it wasn't a spark. It was an explosion. Not a metaphor. A surge of primal force erupted between them, a blinding collision of light and power that threw their souls not apart, but together. The mate bond, long denied and buried, roared to life like wildfire on dry grass, and in that instant Nira saw everything. His childhood, the crown thrust on him too young, his parents dead too soon, the first signs of the silver root's decay, his desperate search for salvation. The moment he saw her on that block, and the cry from his wolf that shattered his soul mine. Kael saw it too, the massacre, the fire, her parents shielding her from rogues with their dying breath, the slaver's chains, the bruises, the auction block, the humiliation, the sparrow, the power rising from deep within. They broke apart gasping, stumbling away like they'd been underwater too long. Kael clutched his head. No, it was real. His mate, his cure, his sacrifice. You're, he stammered, and before either could speak the word, mate, the door slammed open. Riven entered flanked by 2 guards, but these weren't Moonwatchers. They were his own, loyal to him. They wore full war leathers, faces hard and weapons drawn. Well now, Riven said, a smirk creeping over his scarred face. This complicates things. Kale spun instincts razor sharp, placing himself between Riven and Nira. What is the meaning of this? He barked. I told you to wait. I've been waiting. Riven said, his voice slick with poison. Waiting for years for you to break. And now you have. His smile widened. You just mated your sacrifice. No. We didn't, Kyle began. Oh, you touched, Riven sneered. The bond is sealed. The moment you connected it locked. He took a step closer. My dear Uncle Darius is going to be so disappointed. He wanted her for himself. But we had a deal. I help him rot your kingdom from the inside. And he makes me his right hand. Kale went still. You... His voice darkened. You caused the withering. Poisoned the land. Riven shrugged. I just nudged it along. A little silver nitrate in the roots. A few border fires. A few whispers here and there. He unsheathed his blade. It shimmered, dully coated with wolfsbane. The plans changed. Darius is at the gates. He brought his whole army under the lie that he's here to rescue the poor kidnapped Omega. Kale's jaw clenched. A siege. A coup. Riven confirmed. It would have been perfect. The mad Ice King taken out by his beta for slaughtering an innocent girl. His tone turned cold. But now that you're mated, you're stronger, harder to kill. So we'll remove the queen first. And then he lunged. But not at Kale, at Nira. Kale roared, moving in a blur. He threw himself in front of her. Riven's wolfsbane-coated blade sliced deep into Kale's forearm. The toxin hit instantly. His skin sizzled. His veins turned black. Run, Kale barked. But Nira wasn't running. The fear was gone. What rose in her now was cold, focused, unshakable. The Omega was gone. The Luna Queen had arrived. As Riven's guards lunged for her, Nira raised her hand, the same hand that had healed the sparrow, and pushed. Not with muscle, with will. Stop! The word wasn't shouted. It commanded. It carried the force of bloodline, of a moonlight, of power older than any wolf alive. Riven staggered. His guards froze, eyes wide in terror. Their wolves bent, confused, kneeling. Kyle, bleeding and swaying, stared at her in awe. Nira turned to him, voice steady. We have a kingdom to save. Outside the siege horn blew a deep, grim note that shook the walls. Darius had arrived. Kyle growled, bracing against the wall. His left arm was already going numb, the poison spreading. He's... At the gate, he gritted out. It's already begun. Riven struggled to resist, her command veins twitching. It wouldn't hold long. You little, he spat. You think that'll stop me? It doesn't have to stop you. Long, Nira said, tearing a strip of cloth from her dress to wrap Kale's arm. You poisoned the land, and he let you. Kale tried to speak, but the color drained from his face. And then another voice filled the chamber. Well said. Darius stood in the open doorway, flanked by armored warriors. He was smug, his small eyes glinting like a butcher admiring fresh meat. Dear nephew, Riven has served me well, he said, stepping forward. While you played Ice King, he salted your fields. His gaze landed on Nira. And now you brought me the cure. He grinned. A Luna Queen, bonded to a dead man, unclaimed property. He licked his lips. I'm going to enjoy breaking both. Kale, Nira cried, cupping his face. He was fading fast. Her vision from before hit her again, but clearer. It wasn't just emotion this time. It was truth. The prophecy crashed into her mind like thunder. When Crimson Peak bleeds by a traitor's hand, the land will cry for the silent moon. The Alpha King must claim the one who is not Omega. In their union, her blood shall sing. The sacrifice is not of her, but for her. His trust for her power, her life for his land. Together they will heal the root, and the traitor's line will fall to ash. Kale, she whispered, eyes wide. You read it wrong. We have to go to the Silver Root. Now. Too late, Darius sneered. It's already over. No, said a crisp, deadly voice. Solara stepped into the chamber, flanked by 3 of Kael's loyal moon watchers, and behind them, Myvi, gripping a staff glowing with ancient sigils. We heard the horn, Solara said coldly, and we heard your confession. Treason. Sabotage. Attempted regicide. She smiled. You've earned your death. Kill them, Darius roared. The hall erupted into chaos. Blades clashed. Wolves shifted. Roars filled the air. Riven, breaking free from Nira's mental grip, charged at Kael. Kael, Nira screamed. But Kael, running on nothing but alpha rage and adrenaline, surged to meet him. Too slow. The blade arced fast, lethal. But it didn't strike Kael. Nira had thrown herself between them. The sword drove deep into her stomach. She gasped. Silence crashed over the room. Even Riven froze, stunned. Darius went pale. Kael! Kael shattered. The sound he made was not human, not animal. It was raw grief, a soul tearing. No, no, no! Nira looked down at the blade embedded in her, then up at him, her mate, and she smiled. Bloody, shaking, brave. The prophecy. Nira coughed, blood streaking her lips. It said, her blood will sing, not spill. It's a catalyst. Kael. Her shaking hands wrapped around the hilt of the sword still lodged in her. Elias Darius bellowed. What have you done, you fool? You've killed the cure. No. Nira whispered, locking eyes with Kael, her pupils glowing with a pale, luminous silver. He just started it. Her lunar blood met the wolfsbane still coating the blade, and it didn't poison her. It ignited. A violent pulse of white light burst from her body, not warmth, but an unrelenting blast of moon-forged energy. The traitor screamed. Riven, still gripping the blade, took the full brunt of it. The silver laced into his veins reacted like fire against oil. His scream tore the air. He was ash before he hit the stone floor. Darius was flung back, crashing into the wall. The light didn't burn him, it stripped him. His alpha bond snapped. His connection to his wolves vanished. He collapsed, gasping, trembling, nothing. When the blast faded, Nira collapsed. The blade clattered to the ground, slick with her glowing blood. Kael caught her mid-fall. Nira. Nira, no, stay with me. He choked, tears threatening to spill. She was pale, her breath shallow. The tree, she rasped. Kael, the Silver Root. It's not sacrifice. It's union. Take me now. Kael didn't hesitate. He rose, carrying her in his arms like a lifeline. The king was back. The alpha burned inside him. He kicked open the doors, roaring, "The queen is wounded. Form on me, Solara," and the loyal Moonwatchers finished off the last of the stunned traitors. The shattered form of Darius was dragged aside like the broken relic he was. "Go," Solara called. "I'll secure the prisoner." Kael ran, through the halls of his ancestors, through the chaos of war, with Nira cradled in his arms and destiny barreling toward them. The courtyard of the Silver Root was a battlefield. Some of Darius's wolves, broken by the truth, had surrendered. But the loyal fanatics were locked in a blood frenzy. Kael charged through them like a vengeful god. He didn't walk. He cut through the chaos, a wall of power in black leathers, the dying light of his queen wrapped in his arms. The moment his wolves saw her bleeding, their fury ignited. They surrounded him, shields of fur and fang roaring, "Make way for the king." Kael reached the base of the ancient tree. Its bark was crumbling colorless, the roots blackened with decay. Nira shivered. "Kael, I'm so cold." "No," he growled, dropping to his knees. "No, I won't lose you." He laid her gently against the silver root's base. Her luminous blood sank into the poisoned earth. "You will not leave me. I won't allow it." "It's too late." "No, it's not." His voice was thunder. "Not anymore." And suddenly Kael understood, not with his head, with his heart. The Alpha King must claim, and in their union her blood will sing. It was never about killing her. It was always about choosing her. He cupped her face, wiping blood from her cheek. "Nira," he said, voice raw, "I've been a fool. I let fear blind me to what was right in front of me." His forehead touched hers. "You're not my sacrifice. You're my salvation, not my prisoner. My queen." She gasped, her eyes flickering open. "The prophecy," she whispered. "Your trust. For my power. Our life," he said. "For our land." He tilted his head. His fangs gleamed. "I am your mate, Nira, of the Shadowfang pack. And you are mine." He sank his fangs into the curve of her neck. The bond snapped into place with the force of a thunderclap. Nira arched mouth open in a silent scream of pain and ecstasy. Her blood roared with lunar fire. Her soul reached for his, and his answered. The tree responded. Her blood soaked into the silver root's roots, and they lit like veins touched by lightning. A silver glow raced up the trunk from roots to branches. All around them, the battle froze. A wave of healing energy pulsed outward. Not a blast, a breath. The gray bark flushed crimson. The leaves returned not the red of death, but of living rubies. The blight was gone. The wolves dropped to their knees, awestruck. Strength returned. Bonds snapped back into place. Even the air tasted new. Darius's remaining warriors cried out their alpha bond, shattering, as the land rejected them. The fight was over. Kael pulled away from Nira's neck. Her wound gone, skin smooth and whole, her cheeks flushed with warmth. Her eyes fluttered open, no longer a girl's eyes. They were silver-flecked, sharp royal. She reached up, fangs glinting, and touched the bite on her neck, then placed her hand over Kael's heart. "My king," she whispered, her voice filled with radiant lunar power. "My queen," Kael replied, voice cracking with emotion he'd long buried. He stood lifting her high, not as a victim, as his equal. The courtyard watched in silence. Then the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Light bathed them in gold. Kael stood with his queen in his arms, the cursed Omega no one wanted. But now no one was more wanted, no one was more necessary, and no one was more powerful. He turned to his people. "The Thorn treachery ends now," Kael thundered, his voice woven with her power. "The withering is over. A new age begins today." A single guard dropped to his knee. "My king, my queen." Then another, and another, until the entire courtyard, friend and former foe alike, was kneeling before them. Nira, once the girl no one would bid a coin for, now stood as the Luna Queen of the North. She healed the land, and in doing so, she healed him. Thank you for listening to this tale. If you felt Nira's courage, Kael's agony, and the triumph that lit the sky, show your love. Hit that like button so we know you're with us. Share this story with your fellow werewolf fantasy lovers. Subscribe and tap the bell. You won't want to miss the next tale from the North. This is just the beginning. Until next time, stay wild, stay powerful, stay Luna.